Hello and welcome to the webinar, 3 Vital Steps to Take If You're Leaving Your Tech Job. My name is Roshni Pandey. I am the founder and financial advisor at True Root Financial, where we help tech professionals achieve financial independence so that you can live life on your own terms. We help you do this by helping you invest smart, helping you save on taxes, and thirdly, helping you maximize your equity compensation, such as stock options, RSUs, ESPP plans, etc. Why is investing in financial planning different for tech professionals as opposed to others? The main reason is because of the way you're compensated. Tech professionals are compensated both in salary as well as in stock benefits. And this can introduce a lot of upside potential to your net worth, but also introduces a lot of complexity. The reason is because equity compensation can be very complicated. Just look at stock options or RSUs or ESPP. They're all so different from one another. Their taxes are also very different. And then add to that the overall volatility of the tech industry. And if you work for a startup, you know what I'm talking about. For example, if there is a liquidity event where your startup gets acquired or you go through an IPO, there is a lot of money you can make from it, but there's also a lot of risks as well that you need to manage. So for all of those reasons, having an advisor and a partner who can really help you navigate these ups and downs and who understands equity compensation really well will help you turn your income into long-term wealth. Our clients come to us at 3 pivotal moments. The first is when there is a company exit going on, for example, through an IPO or an acquisition. And like I said, this introduces a potential for a lot of money to be made, where all the equity you had formerly is now suddenly liquid. And without good advice, you can leave a lot of money on the table. So good advice can be invaluable at this time when your company is going through an IPO or an acquisition. Or it could be a personal exit where you're leaving your current job and going to start another company, or you're finding another job somewhere else. And this is where you need to make sure that you're not leaving money behind, that you exercise a stock option or you diversify and sell the RSU to secure your financial future. The second reason why clients come to us is because they want to achieve financial independence in order to have more optionality in their life, in order to continue in a career they love, or to retire early. And this is where doing a financial plan can really clarify to you if you're ready to take that step or if you still need to make changes in order to get there, in order to retire early. Then lastly, the third reason why clients come to us is to maximize their equity compensation, like their RSU, their ESPP, and stock options. And this is where diversifying your equity compensation in a tax-aware way can really help you save a lot of money in the long term. And as I mentioned, turn your income into long-term wealth. So welcome everyone. Again, I see a lot of you joining. So if you're a tech professional who is thinking about leaving your job, or if you're a tech professional who just left your job, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about the 3 vital steps you need to take if you're thinking of leaving your tech job or if you just left it. And the 3 vital steps you need to take, first of all, is to optimize the exit strategy in order to create long-term wealth. Second, it is to minimize the tax traps post-exit so that you don't leave a lot of money on the table. And then third, it is to leverage your equity to create that career flexibility that you've always desired. So let's start with the first step, optimizing your exit strategy for long-term wealth. The first thing you need to do here is to review your company stocks. It's to really take inventory of what you have today. First of all, figure out what kind of stock compensation you have. Is it stock options? Is it RSUs? Is it ESPP plans? How much of it is vested and how much still remains to be vested? Is it going to be vested in a matter of a week or a month? If so, it might be worth waiting for the vesting schedule to take place. If you have vested RSU or ESPP, you can take the stocks wherever you go. But if you have stock options, you have up to 90 days to exercise a stock option before you might lose them. So you have to be really careful about those deadlines. The next step is to do a financial plan. Now, what is a financial plan? A financial plan is a roadmap for how you can get to where you want to be. So let's say you're taking a road trip from California to New York. What are the things you'll need for that road trip? First of all, you'll need a map that shows you how you can get from California to New York, right? And in that map, you will need to know where you're going to stop by on the way to New York. Maybe you're going to stop by New Orleans, maybe you're going to stop by Nashville. So those are more of your short-term or intermediate goals on the way to the long-term goal. Then you need to know if you have enough resources and assets in order to achieve those goals. The resources and assets in this case might be a car or money for gas. Now, when you start looking at your resources and your destination, you might have to do a trade-off of which goal is more important than the other. Maybe you have enough resources to be able to stop for 2 nights in Nashville, but only 1 night in New Orleans. Or maybe stopping both in New Orleans and Nashville is going to delay your plan of getting to New York by a certain time. So you'll have to examine those goals to see which one is a more important goal and which one you can leave behind. Then you also have to think about the risk involved. For example, if you leave too late in the day, you might not be able to get to your destination in the time that you want to, or it might get too dark. Or if you don't carry enough cash, you only have credit card, for example, it might get difficult in certain destinations because certain destinations only accept cash and not credit cards. So those are all the risks you need to understand and mitigate. In the same way, when you're doing a financial plan, you also need a roadmap for how you're going to get to where you need to be. You need to know, do you have the assets and resources in order for you to achieve those goals? And you also need to know which goal is a priority. And sometimes you have to let go of certain goals in order to fulfill more important goals. Similarly, you also need to mitigate the risks that might be there. In the same way, doing a financial plan helps you understand how you can get to those goals, to where you want to be, and also helps you save and invest in a tax advantage way so that it's easy for you to achieve those goals and also mitigate the risks on the way. The next thing you need to do to optimize your exit is to diversify your investments. Now, often if you've worked for the same company for years, you might have accumulated lots and lots of company stocks in RSUs and ESPP plans. In general, it's best to diversify the stocks right away as soon as they vest. The reason is because there's mountains of evidence that shows that it's a really bad idea to invest in a single stock. Remember Intel of the 2000s or even Cisco? Both of these companies were hailed as the next big thing back in the early 2000s, but their stocks are doing pretty poorly now. So in the same way, your company might be doing really well today, but you don't know what the future holds for them. So again, it's best to diversify it right away. However, for some clients I know, they have accumulated millions and millions of dollars in their stocks, and sometimes they feel that the stock is going to keep going up and they want to hold on to it. If that's the case with you, I suggest doing something called a gap analysis. A gap analysis helps us figure out what is the minimum amount you need to diversify from your company stocks so that those goals and priorities that you have for yourself is secured regardless of what happens to your company. So we do a financial plan taking into account all of your goals, all the short-term and long-term goals, as well as all the life milestones like buying a house, buying a second house, etc., sending kids to college, etc. And then after that, we take that equity compensation or that company stock away from the plan to see how it fares. Most likely the plan will fail at that point because you're taking a big chunk of your asset away from it. And that shortfall tells us how much money you absolutely have to protect at any cost in order to meet all your priorities, all your life priorities and goals. And this is the minimum amount that we must diversify in order for your financial plan to work. And that is the gap analysis that shows us how much we need to diversify. Now, once we do that, we still have to figure out what the most tax efficient way there is for us to diversify diversify your company stock. And we'll talk about that next. Now, let's talk about minimizing tax traps. This is the second step that you need to take if you're leaving your tech job. The first thing to do here is to understand the tax implications. As I mentioned, equity compensation can be pretty complicated because each type of equity compensation has its own tax implication. The way RSUs are taxed are so different from how ESPP stocks are taxed. So you have to understand What is the difference there? Restricted stock units are basically taxed as income taxes when they vest, and then when you sell the stock, you will have a capital gains depending on how long you held on to the stock. ESPP stocks, on the other hand, it really depends on the grant date and the purchase date. They can be taxed as income or as capital gains. So you have to be really careful about that. Stock options, depending on what it is. If it's an incentive stock options, it can be all capital gains if you meet those holding criteria. And then your non-qualified stock options are taxed partly as income and then partly as capital gains tax. So you need to really understand the tax implication of each type of equity compensation you have. The second thing to do is to plan for your taxes before you exercise or sell your stock. Now, the way we work with clients is that we get the tax returns from the client before we have them sell the stock, and then we do a tax projection to see how selling the stock and exercising will affect their taxes. We actually had a client recently who came to us after he sold his incentive stock options. He used to work for a startup, and there was an opportunity in his startup to sell his private company incentive stock options in the private market. And as a result of the sale, he was able to get $600,000 in proceeds of the sale. However, because he didn't have an advisor, he didn't know that you could get a more favorable tax treatment in incentive stock options if you held on to the share and you sold it 2 years from grant date and 1 year from exercise date. So he sold everything all at once, so he had a disqualifying disposition. And because he didn't know how much taxes he would owe, he was holding the entire $600,000 in proceeds in idle cash, waiting for April 15 of next year. So when he came to us, we got his tax returns from the previous year, and then we showed him how much tax he would owe given how much he had exercised and sold. And then we helped him reduce that tax by, first of all, increasing his 401k contribution. He was only contributing to a Roth 401k account. So we changed that completely and switched him to a traditional 401k, which would reduce his taxable income, which is what we want in order to reduce his taxes as well. And the second thing we did was start a donor advised fund for him and contribute appreciated stocks there so that his taxes would come down again. With all of these moves that we did, we were able to bring down his taxes by almost $100,000. And then after we knew what the total tax was that he owed, we kept that money aside in cash for him to pay his taxes next year. And then the rest of the cash we invested for him in the market. So that way he was able to get the return on his investment and not just sit on cash the whole time. Now, if you are in a similar position as him, where you have a liquidity event where you're able to sell your private company shares, or you just have RSUs or ESPP stocks sitting in your account and you want to sell them, it's really important for you to speak with an advisor before you sell anything in order to understand what the tax implication would be and how to minimize and potentially spread that tax across several years so you're not hit with a huge tax bill in the same year. Now that brings us to the third step you need to take before you leave your tech job, which is to leverage your equity in order to get a better offer at your next job or to create more flexibility for yourself. The way you do this is by doing a financial plan, as I mentioned before, where you can factor in your equity to understand how you can create that optionality, that flexibility for yourself. Be it, you want to retire early, you want to take a sabbatical, or you want to fund your next venture, your next startup. Do a financial plan to understand how you can use that equity in order to fund the next phase of your life. The second thing you can do is use that equity to negotiate a better offer for yourself. If you're leaving lots of unvested RSUs or stock options or anything, any kind of equity compensation on the table, use that to negotiate a better offer with the next company. If you have a great compensation package at your current company, use that again to negotiate a better offer at the new company. Ask if they can match that for you. So that brings us to the end of this webinar, the 3 vital steps to take if you're leaving your tech job. I hope you found it useful. Again, my name is Roshni Pandey, financial advisor at True Root Financial. If you'd like to chat with us one-on-one, please go to our website at www.truewoodfinancial.com and book a free consultation with me. Thank you so much.